it doesn't really make sense that, gear is so much better, specs are so much better, but the bosses are just, they're all right. It's like, okay, yeah, you have like 5 seconds to get out of this like AoE or you die.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, cool. So you just like run out of it. Like it just seems a little messed up. And another thing too is like how they're scaling the items. Level 60, getting an item with like 50 of one stat was like godly.
It was almost unheard of, actually.
And yeah, and then you go into Burning Crusade, and items have like 100, 150, of a stat, and then you get into Wrath, and it's like 200, and like items have like 800 spell power, and like this and that. It's just so ridiculous. Like it's scaled up so fast that
a
level 80 can literally go into like Molten Core and like solo it. Like how does that even?
Well, it's not even a challenge. That I know that you can like. I don't know, you could probably like 3-man 16 acts or something. I don't know if it's even that hard.
Yeah, like, and just like people can solo on Eixia and stuff, right? And like you look at people doing DPS and they're doing like 15k damage, like 20k damage, 30k damage for their crits. And you're looking at Burning Crusade and it's like, oh, okay, 3k damage, 4k damage. And then you're looking at maybe a little more depending on the class, obviously, but and then you're looking at pre-BC, and it's like 1k damage.
Yeah.
1k damage was good back then.
Yeah, you're doing 1400 DPS, and you're like godly.
Yeah, like pre-BC was like, I think like 800 DPS was like insane. Like 800 DPS was like a fully decked Fury Warrior with Wind Fury Totem and like all the buffs you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
And again, like in full tier, or not full tier obviously, but full like Nax epics and stuff.
Yeah.
So like it just didn't scale that well, like, because you went from having like really insane items in Naxxramas and pre-BC, and then Burning Crusade, Naxxramas items were like Tarzan items, and then all of a sudden it just went into like this insane, like, just ramping up of power, and it
seems like there's almost no balance really to how they do gear anymore.
And like a level 60 probably can't win against like a level 70 because the gear just went so far up. It's just actually impossible. Like, he's gonna hit you for like 4k, and you're gonna hit him for 1k. Like, it doesn't really get balanced that well in that aspect. But
yeah, well, like I said, I'm gonna keep checking out the content as it gets updated, around launch or whatever. Perhaps I'll be intrigued. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm not gonna hold my breath. I'm probably never gonna go back unless
that's the way I'm leaning here. I'm probably never gonna go back. I'm just gonna give it. I'll give it the time of day. I'll check it out. I'll look at the information, but there's a very low chance I'll actually come back. So, where we were going with our last podcast when we finished talking about the other stuff, we were going to talk about Star Wars: The Old Republic, which I think we had hinted at, and I could rant about World of Warcraft all day, and that.
It's not going to get
don't want to listen to 5 hours of World of Warcraft. So, Star Wars: The Old Republic. Now, there's a couple things I've learned about this game, and a couple common, misconceptions that are really starting to drive me crazy with people. The Old Republic is your very definition of that new game that everybody's looking so forward to. Everybody's just freaking out over. It's going to be the best thing ever. It's going to be changing the face of games forever. And then you really have to wonder, what is it that is so appealing about this game? I mean, obviously it's a BioWare game, so you've got the hype around that. People love BioWare games.
BioWare makes
years.
BioWare makes amazing games, amazing storylines. So, I mean, and that's part of what Old Republic is kind of based around. Like it's almost like a single player game, but it's an MMO with like co-op in instances, right? Like there's going to be a really really good story, and for people that I mean, you can
assume that BioWare won't. You can garbage.
You can assume that. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna have nice flavorful situations, situations that reflect based upon what side you're on and what class you are and all this other stuff, and like so you definitely know it's going to be great in that aspect.
Yeah, we know there's going to be a lot of things great about it, but I think it's also going to fall into the same trap that a lot of the new games have been, where we have to remember at the end of the day, this is another MMORPG. There's going to be a lot of the same things that have driven us mad about other games in this game also. I mean,
yeah,
to pretend that this game is the second coming of Christ is just completely ridiculous. I mean, it's obviously going to be a good game for the aspects that they're improving on. But another thing that has really bothered me about this game is, the story obviously is going to be great. The visuals look, pretty smooth and pretty polished. But when it comes down to the core gameplay, it seems like they've kind of jumped on the World of Warcraft kind of thing. And I know everybody wants to punch you in the face when you say WoW clone, so I won't say it. But, when you watch this game in action, it's actually really hard to deny that a lot of the gameplay seems to be from that, where, you have your the same hotkey setup, the same controls, the same movement. And while familiarity is really nice, you have to wonder how many games are we going to be able to handle that have the same setup. I mean, look how Warhammer turned out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what they should have done with it is done more like almost like how Global Agenda had it, was like third person. You have to actually aim to do something.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure this is basically based off of WoW's auto attack scheme, where if you have a gun,
yeah, I think
you have a gun, you just auto attack.
I think there was some.
Well, I know you don't. I know you don't like actually aim. Like you don't actually target someone and shoot them in the head with your blast.
Yeah, you don't do that. I think there was some sort of argument as to whether or not there actually is an auto attack feature. I think all of your attacks had to be done through keys or something. But it is still the same target system and the same.
Basically like AOC then, if they're using team. But I think what they should have done is made it more like almost like Global Gender or any other third-person kind of shooter game, and just made it so it was actually something a little bit more like unique. And I mean, it's not like unique, but then at least it felt like a game that actually was a lot different than WoW, because when I look at the combat, like, okay, you target onto them.
And not only that, but it seems that
like it just doesn't seem all that like it's not something I'm gonna be like.
It's just gonna be that same combat system again, kind of thing. It seems like.
Yeah, it's just gonna be the same combat system. So unless like it's amazing story, amazing co-op, amazing everything else, the combat system is gonna feel really dull and stale, and it's not gonna be that exciting. But if they did like a more of a scheme like Global Agenda, like imagine aiming your like Force Lightning, imagine aiming your blaster shots, imagine aiming, everything, like even like when you swing your lightsaber, like you're moving around, you swing your lightsaber, you click the button to swing like Savage or something, Savage 2, even like something like Savage 2, even if you could go into first person, that'd be great too, you know what I mean? Like, if you had a blaster, you could go in first person, and you actually had a blaster, and you could like shoot people in the head and stuff. They should have made like a transitional first person kind of game, because that way it would the combat would be a little bit more fresher.
It'd also be much more immersive too.
Yeah, and it'd be a lot more immersive because like you're actually aiming your blaster at like a clone trooper or whatever, right? You're actually aiming it at his head, and you're shooting him in the head, right? Like it feels a lot more awesome than just clicking on him and going, okay, shoot, like power shot 3, range 3, like. So I think that's what they should have done with that. But I mean, they're obviously not going to revamp it in like one day.
Oh yeah, so. Well, it's already set in stone. I mean, the game seems to be already in its, nearing its final stages. It's obviously not finished, but everything is pretty much set for the game. But where I was going with my argument was because they've borrowed the traditional MMORPG combat system, and it's very clear that there's going to be raid-type content, instance content. It seems to be, one of the themes of the game. It's very clear that there's going to be the same group composition-type gameplay that we saw in games like World of Warcraft. Now, my question is, are they going to continue with the same trend that Blizzard has gone with in trying to appeal to that very casual, open, broad audience, or are they going to, make the game challenging for the sake of actually making a good game? That's what really bothers me, is that since they've borrowed these mechanics from other games, are they actually trying to appeal to the same audience, or are they, just trying to make their own game? It's really hard to tell. I haven't seen enough of the game to be able to say, but it's one of the things that really bothers me. Is that I just don't want, familiarity, like I said, is nice, but I don't want to be playing the same thing that I got tired of and became too easy.
Yeah, and like, yeah, that's another thing. Like, I don't know how like difficult anything is. Like, it's hard to tell. I mean, I was thinking about picking up the game, but like, it's one of those things. Is like they charge you $80 for the game, and then you have to do a monthly fee on top of that. And it's like if you just want to try it out, like, it's just one of those things that, and you don't know until you get in the end game whether or not it's going to be fun.
Which is
that is basically where it's
really
at, right?
the killer.
Right, so you're probably gonna have to end up forking over like $150 total once you pay the monthly subscriptions and stuff to figure out whether or not you're going to be even playing the game for any period of time. So that's kind of I'm kind of antsy about jumping into it, but I haven't really played an MMO like an MMO in quite a while. Like
it might be interesting to get into
a full-on MMO, but yeah, like they also have space combat too. That's another thing that they added.
It's also confirmed that they do have a battlegrounds type PvP system, which I was kind of on the fence about. I'm a big fan of world PvP. I mean, I think there's nothing more interesting than getting a quest in a cantina from a guy than having the Sith come in and try and kill you. I mean, it's just it's just more interesting. Now, we're not sure if there's going to be a lack of world PvP, but with my experience with Warhammer, the emphasis on battlegrounds really killed world PvP, and I think that's one of the reasons why Warhammer did so poorly. Is that we were promised questing in volatile areas, and when it came down to it, unless you were on the most populated server on the planet, you just didn't get that because everybody was just leveling in the battlegrounds. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I like battlegrounds, but it can also be a curse too if the game puts too much emphasis on it. So
yeah, and yeah, that's another thing. Like it depends on how much they emphasize on the instanced battleground combat type of thing for PvP. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure how open the world is. Like I'm not sure if it's just instanced like a small like say in World of Warcraft if you went from Durtarn to the Barrens, you'd enter an instance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think it's quite that closed. I think it is fairly open from what I've seen, but I don't think it's like a full planet.
Yeah.
Thing. I don't think it's quite like that.
And that's another thing too is that the problem with using this auto attack or like auto aim or whatever feature is that no matter how skilled you are, it's probably going to matter on how much good gear you have. Because if you're like a level like 10 Sith Lord or whatever, and you're fighting a level 15 smuggler, you should rightfully have a good chance of killing him because you are a Sith. You have a lightsaber. You should be able to rape his ass.
That's another thing that's actually bothered me quite a bit is because it seems like the classes have kind of gone in the way of the actual lore. I mean, rightfully, none of these guys are going to be able to beat a Jedi. I mean,
that depends. Like you could adjust the lore to because think about a smuggler. I mean, he could use some sort of weird device to weaken the Jedi, like some weird bomb or something I wouldn't say a smoke bomb, but some sort of weird bomb that they can just throw. And I mean, a Jedi can't deflect bombs that I can recall of. But yeah, obviously a Jedi would be too unbalanced. Obviously, if Jedis were as capable as good, unless they did some sort of Jedis versus Siths and bounty hunters and everything else at once.
Yeah, but then you're just asking for too much.
Yeah, it's just a little too weird, but
because they clearly want a class-based system.
To make the lore a little bit more acceptable, they really need to. They really need some sort of system to make it so it actually makes sense. Like the smuggler or the agent or whatever should have something that hinders the Jedi or whoever's abilities, some sort of neurotoxin or something, like a toxin bomb or something. I don't know.